This one mistake could end up costing you thousands of dollars. As of August 17th, the real estate space has dynamically changed. And to be honest with you, for the better, it was long overdue. But there are some things that need to take place for home buyers and home sellers to be able to market and view property. And in this video, I'm going to go through three things so that as a home buyer, you can better understand what you need to do in order to take a look at a property. And if you're a home seller, how to protect yourself, because this one mistake could cost you thousands. My name is Steve Rotsart, and I'm a local real estate agent in San Diego, California. And I've been practicing for way too long. Let's put it that way, almost 30 years now. And as of August 17th of 2024, the real estate space dramatically changed. And to be honest with you, it's for the better. I'm in big favor of it. There's a lot of reasons why, but we can get into one very specific one because it affected me personally a number of years ago. Now, there are properties that are on the market, and as a home buyer, you're interested in seeing them. You probably see them online. You probably see them through a portal like Zillow, Redfin, Trulia. Anywhere that you can actually take a look at property, there are homes that are being showcased. And as of August 17th, some of those rules to be able to take a look at that property have dramatically changed. Now, I am licensed as a real estate agent in the state of California, so I'm going to talk to you specifically with regards to California's rules and some specifics with regards to my broker to help protect our clients. But there are rules and regulations for 49 other states that I'm not privy to. And so if you are in that market, you might want to specify and talk to a local professional to make sure that you're caught up to speed on how things work. Now, as of August 17th, there's really only three ways that you can take a look at a property that's actively on the market. So you saw it in a portal. Maybe you saw it in some type of multiple listing system if you have access to that, which would be from your agent's feed, or maybe you saw a sign out in front of a property. Well, there's only three ways to walk through that front door. The first is with the listing agent. Now, the listing agent is going to be the person that actually was retained by the seller to market and sell that property. Usually their sign is right out front of the property. You can see their information right there. Take a look at it and then call them directly if that's what you elect to do. There are some buyers that elect to work that way. There's nothing wrong with it. There are some states, I will tell you, that have gone away from dual agency relationships, meaning that the same agent cannot represent the buyer or the seller. So check your local market can kind of verify some of those things. But a listing agent in the state of California has the right to showcase their own properties and allow a buyer to tour. Now, here's the exception. The tour is simply that. It's just a tour. There can be no talk about negotiations of constructing any type of offer or anything of that nature. It is simply just a tour. Much like the second way that you can tour a property, an open house. In an open house, an agent actually allows you to tour the property with no obligations, no signed agreements, no nothing. And number one and number two are exactly the same. You don't have to have anything signed to go ahead and take a look at a property. From a seller's perspective, it kind of allows you to showcase your property in a short amount of time to the maximum amount of people. But at the same time, there's no knowledge of the qualifications of those individuals walking through the front door. Which comes to our last way to take a look at property. Now, as of August 17th, the only way to schedule a private appointment to tour a property is that as a home buyer, you need to have a signed buyer representation agreement. These are fantastic for a lot of different reasons. There are some communities, my understanding, that might have only touring agreements or something of that nature. I'm not privy to that. Our brokerage doesn't participate in that, so all the power to you if you do have a touring agreement. I'm against them. Here's a reason why. Our company does have its own buyer representation agreement. We've gone away from the Department of Real Estate for the state of California's form specifically. And the reason is because there are caveats in here that really protect our client, and they also protect us as a broker. And this buyer representation agreement, what I love about it is that it starts the conversation. If you're a home buyer and you're interested in purchasing a home, you've made it a goal. This is a conversation that you need to have in advance before you ever actually walk through a front door on an individual basis to where you could actually see yourself placing yourself in that home. Open houses and different things like that, I'm all for those. I tour open houses. I go to new construction communities. I look at designs. I do the same thing. But when my mind shift has gone from window shopping to being more serious, I think that a more serious conversation needs to take place with regards to the home buying process, which it is a process. There is nothing that happens overnight when buying a home. It's truly a process to go from A to Z to secure the home of your dreams. And the buyer representation agreement is very specific with regards to that. Now, in my particular case, I do list property and we show our own listings. If I've graduated from a conversation with a buyer and I need to actually have a more serious conversation where they're interested in having someone write an offer for them, then that conversation has to change. And this buyer representation agreement needs to be presented and really gone through so that the buyer understands it. One of the biggest things in here is that commission has to be negotiated upfront on the buyer's side so that the buyer understands what their obligations are for retaining the services of that agent. Now, there's negotiations that we'll get into, and I'll get specific on that, but this is the upfront conversation for that. So the buyer representation agreement, you're going to go through, and there's some specific language and timeframes that buyers can only be represented. If you call and let's say you just found a property and you ask that I showed that property to you, I would have to have this conversation with you in advance. But there's one section in this document that is very specific, and I want to kind of shed light on that. One of the things that it says is right here, it will say type of property. Now, this exists not only in our agreement, but it also exists in the state of California agreement. In my particular case, if I don't know you, and home buyers, this is going to help protect you. There's a little hack. I only put that specific that address. So if we don't have a relationship and you're not comfortable with me yet, or we have not built that trust so that you think I have your best interest in mind, I would only put that one address of that property so that we could go ahead and allow you to tour the property in a private showing with no one around so that you have the ability to tour the property under your terms. But if we were going to get further to where I've exposed the home buying process and we've built a relationship where we're going to actually do a home search very specific to your wants and needs, that section is going to be kind of expanded. And I'll kind of shed some light on a different buyer representation agreement that kind of showed that. One of the things that you need to understand, these buyer representation agreements are only good for 90 days. That's it. If an agent tries to make you sign an agreement any longer than 90 days, it's void. So there's nothing that is valid in that contract. And that actually just happened on one of our most recent deals. Let's talk about that. So in the state of California, no matter what, you're going to sign a document. It's called an agency disclosure agreement. In this document, you're going to see that basically it clarifies who each party is representing. And I'm going to give you an example of something that just took place. And it actually voided the entire representation agreement. And it actually ended up benefiting the seller, but it also benefited the home buyer. And we'll get into the specifics. But in this buyer representation agreement, you're going to see, and this isn't actually signed one that corresponds to that voided document, that this document here represents that this particular agent represented that buyer. And every client will sign one of these along with your buyer representation agreement. That is an agency disclosure. Now, to go further into a contractual phase, the representation agreement itself, this is the standard state of California buyer representation agreement, okay? This particular document that I'm showing, I am showing for education purposes so that you understand how to protect yourself as a home buyer, but you can also protect yourself as a home seller. Let me explain why. There's some very specific areas that one needs to look at when you're looking at this as a home buyer. You want to make sure that you have a date prepared. You want to make sure that this time frame of a representation period does not exceed 90 days. And it's actually right here in the language underneath this. Now, this is a document that I received on one of my listings. So this is something that actually literally just came up. And I'm shedding light on it because once we got in escrow, it is not my job in advance to actually prove or show that the document is void. My job is to protect the seller and to negotiate on their behalf in this particular case. However, it became an issue later in the transaction. Here's the reason why. The representation period is void. Technically, at that point, that means the document itself comes into question. All right. The second thing is that one of the items, and I talked about this earlier with regards to our Caldwell Banker agreement, and we talk about type of property. In the buyer representation agreement with the state of California, there's a section that says location. All right. And if right there, that is the section that I would put a property address if I was going to put something specific or an additional description. What agents sometimes can do is they will list the entire county. So if you are going to buy any piece of real estate in the entire county. Now, how do you protect yourself as a home buyer? If you're not comfortable with that agent yet and you want to be very specific, it could be a housing development. It could be a zip code. It can be very, very specific to one particular address. Okay. I literally just signed a buyer client and it's only in a particular housing development. That's fine. That's exactly what they're looking for. And if we can't find something in that development, you don't want to be bound to a contract. Here's the other thing that you want to make sure as a home buyer, that you have the ability to cancel this agreement within a 24-hour period. The actual agreement is owned by the brokerage firm, not by the agent. All right. Now, I have a philosophy because I've been doing this probably way too long. But the reality is if you don't think I have your best interest in mind and I can't represent you, well, then we should probably part ways. And I wish you the best, and I want you to have someone that you think can better represent you. That's always my wish. And I have had that happen in my lifetime. In almost 30 years in real estate, sometimes things like that take place. The reality is I've also had some clients come back after the fact because they realize and they understand the specifics of what a good real estate agent actually does for a client. So I want to shed light on these things so it helps protect you. And you can better understand how that can specifically, for your contracts, be molded into what you want and what you need. Now, one last thing. In this document, you will see right here, this time frame. If you're a home seller and you are presented this, because there is a section in the purchase contract that the buyer wants the seller to compensate their buyer's agent. It's a very new thing as of August 17th that it has to be a specific request. I love this. I love this. I love this. I love this. And the reason is because now commissions are negotiable and they've always been negotiable, but now they're negotiable in the contract. They never were. I will tell you that. And I know that for a fact because I was sued by a real estate agent because of it. So if you ever have questions on that one, hit me up. I'm happy to tell you the story and how to protect yourself. Lesson learned. But it was a real estate agent that sued me, not a client. But the reason is because compensation is for the act of doing something and actually closing the escrow, okay? And in the new contracts, there is a section for the state of California and most states now where the buyer can request the compensation of their agent in the contract, fully negotiable. That dollar amount can be anything. It can be a percentage, it can be a flat fee, it can be a dollar amount, totally negotiable. But what's interesting is because this particular document was void, I represented a seller in this case. So we actually countered it out of the proposal entirely of the contract. And then when it came to light, the buyer and the buyer's agent had to deal with it directly. And they agreed on some amount that I'm not privy to. But the reality is it wasn't what was presented in that particular document because the document was void. So if you're on any home search site, Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, there's going to be sections where it says like, click here for more info or click for another agent to contact you regarding the property. The only time that you can actually have that specific conversation is that if they are opening the door, you got to remember you're going to have that buyer representation agreement. Now, I run a fantastic website. Right here, you can take a look at it, eastsanDiegoCounty.com. You can search all the homes that are available, not only my listings, but all the listings in San Diego County. And if there are specific properties that are on there that are not my brokerage firm's listings, we will have these conversations regarding a buyer representation agreement. And that is how the rules have changed and made it better, not only for you as a home buyer, but also for a home seller. Because now we're getting out in front of it and having conversations in advance of what the roles are for a buyer, a seller, a buyer's agent, a seller's agent, and any and all commissions are fully negotiated and talked about upfront before any paperwork is executed. So I think these are fantastic times in our industry. I hope this video provided some type of guidance and some understanding of how the rules have changed since August 17th. I'm always here to share anything and everything. If you ever have any questions, go ahead, drop them down in the comments below. And if you're sticking around for all my new neighborhood community videos, we got some great ones coming soon. So I invite you to follow along. And if you haven't, make sure you like and subscribe because we publish new videos every single week. And I look forward to helping you and everyone in my community. See you on the next one.